Hello, I'm Callie. I thought I was going on a healing trip with my sister and her friends, but they left me stranded in a tiny village in Provence. No phone, no wallet, no goodbye. At first, I thought it was just a bad joke. But then, emails were sent in my name, my job disappeared, and videos of me crying started showing up online. Was this really just a prank? Or had they planned to erase me all along? Why would your own family go this far to shut you out? They thought it would be funny. One big, harmless joke. A group prank I was too uptight to get. That's what they'd say later, if they ever bothered to say anything at all. I stood on the side of a narrow cobblestone road in Saint-Laurent-de-Lys, watching the taillights of the rented van flicker, then vanish down the hill like a bad punchline. The breeze carried lavender and dust. I stood there, blinking in disbelief, gripping the strap of my bag like it was the last anchor to the world I thought I knew. They'll be back, I told myself out loud. 5 minutes, 10, but the minutes stacked like bricks in my throat. Nothing but quiet, the clink of cutlery from an outdoor cafe, and polite but puzzled glances from locals who didn't speak English. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve and pointed at me. I managed a stiff smile. My hands were already sweating. I checked my phone. Dead. Of course it was. No charger, no adapter. Monica had promised she packed the backup. "You always overthink everything," she'd said, rolling her eyes at me as she shoved clothes into her pink monogrammed suitcase. I hadn't replied. I reached into my purse. Wallet? Gone. Probably left in the van, tucked into the seat pocket with my sunglasses. I counted the cash in my side pouch, 83 euros and some change. That's all I had. And then it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. They meant to leave me. 2 nights earlier, we'd had dinner at a vineyard just outside Aix. It was supposed to be the healing moment of the trip. Monica toasted to new beginnings, while Dylan kept topping off everyone's wine. The table laughed a little too hard when I declined my 3rd glass. "You're still in divorce mode, huh?" Monica said, loud enough for the waiter to glance over. "Girl, it's a trip. You can't mess this one up, too." I remember pushing my chair back quietly, muttering something about needing air. I waited for someone, anyone, to come check on me. No one did. I should have known then. I think I did. The sun was dropping lower now. I wandered through the village, heart pounding, unsure if I was walking toward help or just trying to look less abandoned. Everything felt surreal, too picturesque to hold something so cruel. The bakeries were closing, the shops dimming. No familiar signs, no tourists. A narrow alley led me to a bakery. The windows were foggy with warmth, and the smell of butter hit me like a memory I couldn't place. Inside, an older woman in a flour-dusted apron stood behind the counter. She looked up and paused when she saw my face. Her eyes softened. No English, but kindness doesn't always need translation. She pointed to a wooden chair and the wall outlet. I smiled. A crack of hope. I plugged my phone in, but nothing happened. Wrong voltage, wrong adapter, wrong continent. I don't know what showed on my face, but the woman, Martha, I'd learn later, crossed the room and rested a hand on my shoulder. A wordless gesture. Gentle. It nearly broke me. I stared at the useless charger and felt the grief settle. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and sharp, like realizing you've been talking to an empty room. Like waking up and knowing you were never the favorite child. This wasn't a petty prank. It was something else. A purge. A deliberate forgetting. They didn't want me to come back. Not to Boston. Not to them. Not to anything that reminded them I existed outside their curated lives. I came here to heal. To reset after a divorce that unstitched a decade of my life. And now, I'd been discarded like luggage that didn't match the aesthetic. Fine. If they meant to scare me, it worked. But now I was just angry. At some point in the night, I must have fallen asleep sitting up. My neck ached, and the hard chair beneath me had left lines across my thighs. Outside the bakery window, morning had settled in, soft golden light spilling onto the cobblestones, the scent of rising bread warming the air like a blanket. Martha appeared from the back room, holding a tangled knot of cords and plugs. Her fingers fumbled through them until she pulled out something old and slightly yellowed. She held it out to me with a hopeful look and gestured toward my phone. It was a UK adapter, the kind people forget in rental flats and never return for. "Try this," she said, in heavily accented English. A rare gift, 2 words I didn't expect. I thanked her, plugged it in, and waited. The screen blinked once. Then again. A low buzz. Battery, 1%. Enough to flicker to life. Not enough for anything else. I tapped the power button, praying. Before I could open a single app, the screen lit up with an incoming call. Reed. I hadn't seen that name in months. The name alone made my chest go tight. The bakery around me blurred for a second, like someone had yanked me back across the ocean. My thumb hovered over decline, but something made me answer. "Hello?" His voice came through clear, smooth, like it always had, like nothing had happened. "Callie," he said. "Finally." I didn't speak. He filled the silence fast. "Your mom's worried. I mean, really worried. Monica called me in tears." Liar. Monica hadn't shed a tear in a decade unless it was for a photo. "You just disappeared," he continued, as if I hadn't been dumped in another country like forgotten luggage. "You always do this. Shut down. Vanish when it gets hard." "I didn't vanish," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I was left." He sighed, like I was a child who still didn't get the lesson. "Look, maybe the timing was off, but everyone's under stress. You have to stop taking everything so personally." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, heart thudding. I knew this dance. Reed never yelled. He was never the villain. Just endlessly, reasonable, calm, always angling the mirror to show your own reflection and ask what's wrong with you. "I talked to your mom again," he said casually. "She's devastated. Your dad doesn't even know where you are. Do you realize how selfish this looks?" "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," he said, a beat too quick, "but you sure know how to make it about you." There it was, the real tone, polite on the surface, poison underneath. "You need to come home, Callie. You're not going to fix anything out there. You can't heal surrounded by strangers and whatever it is you think you're doing." I stayed silent. Every word he said pressed on old bruises. Then came the line that snapped everything. "I know Provence isn't ideal, but maybe you'll come back a little clearer. A little cleaner." Cleaner? I froze. I hadn't told anyone where I was. Not even the village name. I hadn't tagged a location, hadn't posted anything. But Reed knew. He didn't say it like a guess. He said it like he'd seen it. That call wasn't concern. It was surveillance in disguise. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just said, "Goodbye, Reed," and hung up. I sat there for a long time, breathing shallow, letting it wash through me. Then I stood and walked to the bakery's doorway. Outside, the sun lit up a distant row of olive trees that stretched like arms into the hills. Quiet, steady, rooted. "I'm not your mess to clean up," I whispered. "Not anymore." I didn't sleep much that night. The phone call with Reed had frayed every nerve, and even the comforting scent of yeast and sugar drifting in from the bakery couldn't calm the static inside my chest. By morning, I needed to move. Sitting still made me feel hunted. The village market stretched along the main square, woven with bright umbrellas and wooden crates stacked with tomatoes, peaches, and bottles of olive oil. I didn't have a plan, only the urge to look normal, blend in, browse, pretend I belonged. I picked up a small basket and wandered between the stalls, grabbing a loaf of crusty bread, a handful of apricots, and a bottle of water. I was reaching for a bunch of thyme when someone bumped into me hard enough to jostle my bag. "Oh, I'm so sorry," a woman said, her voice too cheerful. She had shoulder-length hair the color of honey and sunglasses perched on her head, though the day was cloudy. She smiled like we were old friends. "Callie, right?" I froze. My name hadn't passed a stranger's lips since I landed in France. I didn't know this woman. I searched her face for a flicker of recognition, but there was none. Only that smooth, curated smile. "Didn't we meet at that vineyard tour in Avignon?" she offered, tilting her head. "Or maybe you're friends with Monica?" My stomach clenched. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that something was off. Before I could ask her anything, where she was from, who she knew, she smiled wider and disappeared into the crowd with a breezy, "Take care!" I stood there for a full minute, clutching my basket like a shield. Then I walked away, slowly, then faster. How did she know my name? The question rang louder than any bell tower. Back at the bakery, I ducked into the rear room where Martha stored flour and cleaned vegetables. She looked up from peeling carrots and gave me that same steady glance I was beginning to rely on. I offered a nod, silent reassurance that I was okay. Sort of. Once I connected to the bakery's patchy Wi-Fi, my phone pinged with delayed notifications. I opened my email. Among the spam and subscription newsletters was a single message from my mother. Subject line, from Homebody. "Sweetheart, Monica told us you're not well. If you need help, please don't shut us out again. We're all worried. This behavior isn't like you." My hands tightened around the phone. So that was the angle now. I wasn't just lost. I was unstable. The same storyline they had fed our family years ago when I cried through my first miscarriage, when I stopped smiling after the divorce. Monica had always known how to play the part, the capable one, the fixer. She'd walk into a room with her shiny hair and flawless posture and say things like, "She just needs space," or "It's a lot for her right now." But what she really meant was, "Don't believe her. Believe me." I remembered a Christmas years ago, sitting at the dinner table, trying to explain to my parents that Reed had cut me out of our joint accounts. Monica had laughed. "That's not abuse, Callie. It's marriage. Grow up." And they'd nodded. Because Monica always sounded more reasonable. My eyes burned as I walked behind the bakery, past a row of potted herbs, into the clearing beyond. I sank to the ground. This wasn't just about being stranded. It was about being rewritten. Again. Recast as the emotional one. The problem. The version of me that Monica could manage, contain, dismiss. I tilted my head toward the sky, blinking hard. "They've got the script," I muttered. "They just needed me to vanish so they could narrate it." I stayed there for a while, letting the quiet press into me, letting the rage cool and crystallize. Then I wiped my face with my sleeve, stood up, and walked back through the alleyway. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't broken. And if they wanted a version of me, they could explain away. They were about to meet the one they couldn't. The words came easily once I stopped trying to soften them. It was past midnight. The bakery had gone silent. Martha had long since gone upstairs, and I sat in the back office with the lights dimmed and my laptop screen the only glow in the room. The email cursor blinked like a dare. Subject line, "You don't get to define me, Monica. You left me on a curb in a country I barely speak the language of. No warning, no explanation, just laughter fading behind a slammed van door." I paused, then continued. "I spent the first hour thinking it was a joke, the second hoping it was a test. By hour 3, I understood it was neither." Each sentence dropped like a stone. There was no venom, just the weight of truth. I'm not writing this for an apology. I know better. I'm writing because you've spent years rewriting my life in your words. Not this time. I ended with, "You don't get to define me anymore." And then I hit send. The email didn't make me feel lighter. It didn't bring closure or triumph. It just made something still. Like I had finally shut a door and locked it from the inside. I slept for 3 hours. When I woke, it was to the scent of cinnamon and apricots and the faint vibration of my phone. New message, Monica. "OMG, you're okay. So relieved. I told Mom you probably just needed time to breathe." Everyone kinda panicked, lol. Hopefully we'll laugh about this someday. Emoji, heart, sparkle, butterfly. I stared at the screen like it had teeth. There was no apology, no mention of what happened. Just bubble-wrapped condescension and a thin layer of performance. She wasn't acknowledging the harm. She was preparing the story for everyone else. The good sister who held it all together. The broken one who ran off. That same tired script. I didn't respond. Instead, I took out the notebook Martha had given me when I first arrived. I hadn't written in it until now. I turned to a blank page and in big letters I wrote, "Who I am." Then underneath, not Monica's version, not Reed's ex-wife, not someone who needs managing, not broken, not missing, not yours. I filled 3 more pages. I didn't stop to edit or second guess. I just let it pour out. Everything I'd traded away for peace, for approval, for silence. The sun was climbing when I finally came out front. Martha stood by the counter kneading dough, humming something low. She glanced up as I passed and said, "You have stronger eyes today." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled gently, pointed to her face. "Before, your eyes were heavy. Today, sharp." I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. "Thanks. I think I needed someone to say that." Later that afternoon, I wandered into town again. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My steps felt different, grounded. I passed the bookstore, the wine shop. I looked at the world with a sense of space, of choice. Monica's email hadn't rattled me. It had confirmed everything I already knew. But by sunset, I would learn Monica and Reed had already taken something else from me. It started with a scroll. I was sitting in the back courtyard behind the bakery, feet up on a cracked bench, soft golden light filtering through grapevines above. I hadn't planned to check my old email. That account had become a graveyard. Expired coupons, forgotten subscriptions, the occasional spam from a wellness blog I didn't remember subscribing to. But something made me open it. The inbox loaded slow, and then there it was. 5 messages stacked one after the other, all from Dana, my former design mentor. My lifeline when I was still figuring out where creativity ended and survival began. The first was dated 2 months ago. "Callie, hope you're well. I've got a remote project I think you'd be perfect for. Eco-architecture, flexible hours, full autonomy. Let me know if you're interested." My throat tightened. The next email was a gentle follow-up. Then another. The 4th was shorter. I didn't hear back, so assuming it's a pass. And then came the 5th, forwarded. Below it, a line chilled my blood. "Thanks for thinking of me, but I've moved on from design. Best of luck." It was from my account. I never sent it. My hands trembled as I reread the message. It was polite, neutral, just enough distance to make it seem final. But I knew that tone. It wasn't mine. It was Reed's. Years ago, he'd helped me simplify by merging our logins, linking accounts, taking little things off my plate. He said I needed to focus on healing. He said it with that voice he used when he didn't want me to argue. I'd nodded. Back then, nodding was easier. Now I saw it for what it was. Control. They hadn't just stranded me in Provence. They'd sabotaged the one thing that could have brought me back to life, my work. Martha found me moments later, hunched over the table, breath shallow. She sat without asking, and waited while I typed frantically into Google Translate. I turned the screen to her. "This," I said. "This is what they took." She read the translation, blinked slowly, then said in her soft accent, "They want you small." I didn't answer. She reached over, tapped the center of my chest with 2 fingers. "You are not small." Something cracked open in me, not with a scream, not with a sob. It was a quiet, burning clarity. I went inside and pulled out my notebook. I drew a line down the middle of the page. Left side, what they've taken, my wallet, my location, my voice, my career. Right side, what I still have, my mind, my hands, my memory, my truth. At the bottom, I wrote, what they never expected. I kept the receipts. By nightfall, I had created a new email account. Something clean, something untainted. I drafted a message to Dana. Subject: that wasn't me. Body: hi Dana, I just saw your messages and wanted you to know. I never replied. Someone else did. I'm still here, still designing, still interested. Attaching a fresh portfolio, some old pieces, some new sketches. Nothing polished but honest. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked send. It wasn't about getting the job. It was about reclaiming the door they tried to seal shut behind me. It was late, the kind of late where even the crickets had gone quiet. The air outside was heavy with the scent of lavender and cooling stone. I'd just finished dinner with Martha. Bread, goat cheese, tomatoes still warm from the sun. My hands still smelled of basil. The message was from Harper. Harper, a friend from back home. More of a former colleague now. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Hey, is this really you? There was a link. My stomach dropped. I tapped it. The screen loaded. TikTok. The username, @DylanDoesTruth. The video opened with shaky footage. Me, sitting on the curb outside the cafe where they'd left me. My face streaked with sweat and mascara. Eyes darting. Voice too soft to hear. Then a quick cut to me, walking aimlessly through the village. Shoulders slumped, lips moving like I was talking to myself. Overlay text. Sometimes you just can't save people from themselves. Cut to Dylan's voice, spliced from somewhere else. We tried. We really did. But she wasn't well. You can't force someone to want help. Background music. Soft, haunting piano. The comment section was worse. Yikes. Poor Monica, dealing with this kind of drama. This girl needs serious help. You can see it in her eyes. She's gone. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the stone floor, the video still playing. I wasn't just being erased. I was being rewritten. My rage didn't come in a scream. It came as stillness, focus. I picked up the phone, walked to the far end of the courtyard, and sat on the step by the herb garden. Then I opened my camera roll. Months ago, at the vineyard dinner, the night Monica mocked my divorce, I'd filmed a short clip. The lighting was low, but the audio was sharp. Dylan slurring his words, Monica rolling her eyes, someone whispering, "She's not gonna last the whole trip." I uploaded it to my laptop, clipped out a 10-second section, overlaid it with a single sentence. Full context is coming. Then I paused. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. So I opened a blank document. I began typing what really happened. The timeline. The night at the vineyard. The fight. The van. The bakery. The stolen job. The email I never sent. I backed it up with dates, screenshots, journal pages, faces, words, context. Then I turned to Martha, who was watching from the doorway, arms crossed over her apron. "I need to say something," I told her, "but it has to be in French." She nodded, disappeared, then returned with a pen and a notepad. We worked on it together. No one has the right to erase your voice. She underlined it, then smiled. By midnight, I had posted a new video. No music, no filter. Just me, sitting in the courtyard, reading my letter. First in French, then in English. I didn't cry. I didn't blink too much. I looked into the lens like I was speaking to the person who mattered most. Myself. The caption read, "They took the narrative. I'm taking it back." I turned off the phone. They didn't back down, so I didn't either. The next morning came quietly. Too quietly. The usual hum of the village waking up felt muted. Or maybe it was just me. My nerves, raw after the post, were pulling at the edges of every sound. I hadn't slept. Not really. I'd turned the phone off after hitting publish, but my mind kept spinning. I was in the middle of folding fresh linens when my inbox pinged. Dana. Subject: need to talk. Urgent. Her message was short. "Hey Callie, quick heads up. Someone reached out to our team last week claiming to be your legal representative. They submitted a portfolio under your name. The work looks like yours. Just tweaked. watermarked by a company I've never heard of. It felt off. Thought I'd check. My heart stopped. Attached was a JPEG. I opened it. It was mine, my design. The rustic modern cafe concept I'd sketched after the divorce. My layout, my palette, even the same notes about repurposed wood and natural light. But my name was gone. In its place, a slick new logo, Vantage Studio. A company I didn't know, a watermark I didn't create. My blood went cold. They hadn't just tried to discredit me online. They were trying to be me. I immediately dialed Dana. Her voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the hesitation. I thought it was strange, she said, so I asked for credentials. The reply came from a man named R. Davis. Said he was your brother-in-law and had power of attorney. I sat down. Hard. Reed. Of course it was Reed. Did he send anything else? I asked. Dana hesitated. Yeah, a signed release. Digital. Looked official. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. I never signed anything. And I hadn't. Not a release. Not a waiver. Nothing. But years ago, Reed had helped clean up my digital life after the marriage started falling apart. He had my old passwords, my digital signature stored on our joint drive. He'd used it. They were using me as their ghost designer. I hung up and paced the courtyard in front of the farmhouse. I could hear Martha inside humming, the scent of orange zest drifting from the kitchen window. I pulled up my Google Drive, frantically typing keywords. Found it. My original cafe design file. Time-stamped. Metadata intact. The layers, the process. A digital fingerprint. Proof. I brought my laptop into the local cafe, where the owner, Lucian, spoke good English. Between his spotty legal knowledge and my translator app, we crafted a cease and desist letter. I forwarded it to Dana, along with the metadata and a new digital signature. Subject line, "This is mine." She responded in minutes. Got it, this helps. I'm pulling back from the other submission. For a moment, I just sat there, hands shaking, staring at the screen. They hadn't just stranded me. They'd tried to build their future with the blueprints of my pain. That night, as the sun fell behind the hills, I sat on the porch with Martha. She brought out 2 mugs of tea and a blanket. We didn't speak much. I watched the olive trees sway and whispered. They tried to bury me with my own roots, but I still have the seeds. She didn't ask what I meant. She just reached over and placed a notepad on the armrest beside me. At the top, she'd written in careful script, Cabinet d'Avocats, Paris. A law firm. Her eyes met mine, steady. Tomorrow I'd call them. But for now, I sat still, not silenced, not erased, just ready. The letter was taped right below the iron latch, flapping gently in the morning breeze. Martha spotted it first when she stepped out with her basket of herbs. She didn't open it, just walked back in and handed it to me like it was a bomb. No name, no return address. The envelope wasn't sealed, just folded neatly, like whoever delivered it wanted speed over formality. Inside was 1 sheet of printer paper, no letterhead, just 12 words. Leave this alone, you've made your point, don't push it further. I stared at it for a full minute, before I realized I was gripping it so tightly my knuckles had gone white. It wasn't signed. Of course it wasn't. But I knew the voice behind those keys. It was the same one that always smiled too wide when I called out the truth. The same tone Reed used when he said, "Let's not make this messy." Martha looked at me, puzzled. Bad news. I handed it over, then pulled out my phone and translated aloud. She read it twice, then met my eyes and shrugged. Good, now they are scared. I laughed once, sharp. That's supposed to scare me, she tilted her head. It only works if you're not already mad. I folded the paper and slipped it into the side pocket of my notebook. No shredding, no burning. I wanted a record of every threat dressed as politeness. I went inside and opened my laptop. 1 folder, labeled Proof. Inside, every timeline I'd built, every screenshot from Dana, the forged email headers, metadata files from my original sketches, A copy of the video reed-edited. A screenshot of the message from Dylan. The legal release with my digital signature, plus my original file showing I'd never authorized anything. I clicked share and sent the entire drive to 2 email addresses. legal@harrowandlentz.fr, Paris law firm Martha had helped me find. Candice.wu@nylawpro.com, Dana's referral. I added a short note. I don't want to sue them yet, but I want the facts to exist somewhere besides my head. If they come again, I won't be unprepared. I hit send and leaned back, watching the blue bar crawl across the screen until it confirmed. Delivered. By mid-afternoon, the nerves had settled into a steady hum of focus. I took a walk through the village, passing the narrow alleyway that led to the courtyard. I stopped for a moment outside the tiny bookstore and watched a young couple inside pick out postcards. They laughed together, touched shoulders. That used to be me and Reed once, before the silencing, the reshaping, the rewrites. I walked on. Later that night, I sat at the bakery's kitchen table with my laptop open again. There was one more thing to do. I opened a new message. No subject. To Monica Davis, I didn't start with hi. I didn't start with dear. I just wrote, this stops here. Not because you asked, but because I say so. That was it. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop and exhaled. It wasn't over, not legally, not emotionally. But the part where they got to write my story? That part was done. I curled up on the little couch near the window, watching the moon rise over the olive trees. This place, the one they thought would break me, had become my mirror. Not of who I used to be, but of who I refused to stop becoming. I didn't win back everything I'd lost, but I reclaimed the only thing that ever really mattered: myself. The morning after the letter, I brewed tea without rushing. The air had shifted. It wasn't lighter, not yet, but it wasn't crushing me anymore either. The first email came from Dana. We've submitted the formal complaint. The Paris team confirmed a few irregularities in the submission documents, names and sign-offs being flagged. Just wanted you to know, it's in motion. I didn't reply right away. Just sat with the weight of it. Not fear, finality. A few hours later, another message came in. Dylan's video has been taken down across all channels. No statement. Just gone. Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement. But it was something. I didn't need their guilt. I didn't even need the court to agree with me, though I hoped it would. I just needed the paper trail to exist. I needed the truth where it couldn't be rewritten anymore. That was done. By the end of that week, I was officially onboarded as a remote consultant for Dana's firm. The work was sporadic, mostly layout concepts and mood boards, but every email, every assignment felt like a stitch in my own skin, being sewn back with my own hands. I also started contributing to a local blog in Provence, an English-language lifestyle site that spotlighted creative expats. My first piece? Designing in Silence. How leaving Boston gave me back my voice. Martha printed it out and taped it behind the register. In return, I helped her digitize her menu. We sat for hours one evening, translating pastry names and adjusting font sizes. She called it Très Modern, and when the screen blinked to life with a sample menu, she clapped like I'd performed a magic trick. I was still here, and I was building something real. One crisp morning, just as the scent of warm figs filled the bakery's courtyard, Jacques from the hardware shop dropped by. "I hear you're good with design," he said, cradling a basket of olives. "We need someone to help with signs for the harvest route." Then he paused. "Also, we could use an extra hand picking, if you're not too busy." I smiled. I have 2 hands and nowhere else to be. That weekend, I stood barefoot in the middle of an olive grove, mud streaking my arms, my laugh echoing louder than I expected. There was no stage, no filter, just me and the trees and a basket that kept tipping sideways. No one asked me about Monica, or Reed, or Boston. And I didn't offer, not out of secrecy, but because, for the first time, they weren't the loudest thing in my life anymore. One evening, I returned to the bench outside the bakery, the same one where I'd once sat stunned and silent, trying to understand how people who claimed to love me could vanish like that. I pulled out my journal and wrote, "That version of me would never believe we made it here." Then I added a line underneath. "Some roots get ripped out. Some get replanted. I'm both." I closed the notebook and stared at the hills, the trees catching the last light of day. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. A single unread message. From Monica Davis, subject, "None. I hope you're well. Maybe someday we can talk." I didn't delete it. I didn't respond either. Instead, I placed my phone face down, turned off the light, and slipped into sleep with the windows open. The wind moved gently through the olive branches, like a breath I could finally exhale. I wasn't healed completely. I didn't need to be. But I was whole enough to keep walking forward, on ground I had chosen. Maybe I'll tell the full story someday. But for now, I have bread to bake and sketches to finish. And that's more than enough. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most aren't strangers. They're the ones who shared your childhood, your holidays, your home. And when they rewrite your story to make themselves look better, it can feel like you've lost everything: your voice, your worth, your truth. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to stay silent to keep the peace. You don't have to keep shrinking so others feel bigger. And you don't have to wait for permission to take your life back. For a long time, I thought healing meant going back to who I was. But now I know. It means becoming who I was never allowed to be. So if you've ever felt erased, abandoned, or made to feel like you were too much or not enough, I want you to know you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what they feared most. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild from a betrayal? Did this story remind you of something you've lived through? Or still trying to rise above? If this video touched something in you, drop A or just type 1 in the comments. And if it didn't resonate with you, that's okay too. Let me know what didn't click. I genuinely want to grow with this community. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for being here. You matter.
It was 15 years ago from now, back when I was in elementary school. April came around, and we had a class shuffle. Our new class teacher was a young woman. When lunchtime came, the teacher turned to a girl who sat next to me and told her not to eat the school lunch. "Katie, you haven't paid your lunch fee, so don't eat, okay?" Katie, who always wore ragged clothes, was a skinny little girl. Apparently, her family was poor, and since last fall, her parents hadn't been paying the school lunch fee. I learned about this later on from overhearing some gossip, but it seemed she was allowed to eat lunch the previous year. Seeing her being the only one without any food on her desk and just looking down made me feel sorry for her. But since the teacher ate lunch in the same room, I couldn't secretly share my food with her. So I left just the bread, wrapped it in a napkin, hid it in my desk, and gave it to Katie after lunch was over and the teacher left the room. "You can eat this." "Really? Thank you, Jason." Back then, I was an outcast among my classmates and had no friends in the same class, but after that incident, I started talking to Katie. When I got home that day, I told my mom about Katie's family situation. "Mom, please, can you make a packed lunch for Katie?" When I pleaded like that, my mom responded, "That poor child. If she can't eat lunch, it won't be good for her growth, and she probably can't concentrate on her studies when she's hungry. It's fine. I'm already making your dad's lunch every day, so adding one more portion won't make much difference." With that, she gladly agreed. The next day at lunch break, when I handed over the homemade lunch my mom made, Katie's eyes widened in surprise. "My mom said to give this to you. Is this a packed lunch?" "Yeah, I told her about you, and she said to give it to you." "Really? Thank you, Jason." She hurriedly ate the lunch before the teacher returned to the classroom. It turned out that Katie's house was in the same direction as mine, so from that day on, we decided to walk home together. While walking, Katie told me about her life. My dad doesn't work, yet he spends all our money on slot machines and horse races. My mom earns the money, but my dad takes it all. Because of this, they were struggling and even in debt. Seeing her wearing the same tattered clothes every day, I felt sorry for her. Our classmates just watched her from a distance. Neither of us had friends. After that, we started meeting up in the morning and going to school together. Some of our classmates teased us, saying, "Are you two dating or something?" But we tried not to let it bother us. I've always been bad at talking to people, but for some reason, I felt at ease talking to Katie. I didn't realize it, but it seemed I was lonelier than I thought. Not having any friends, I was really happy to be able to talk to her. On our way to and from school, we talked about a lot of things. Our families, our favorite foods and animals, homework, and TV shows we watched the previous night. I found out she loves cats. She can't have one at her house, but she enjoys visiting a nearby park where stray cats often gather. My family has a cat. Want to come over and see it? Really? Sure. When I brought her to my house after school that day, my mom warmly welcomed her. When our mixed breed cat showed up, Katie's eyes sparkled with delight. How cute. What's its name? It's Mary. Mary, come here. Katie looked so happy cuddling the cat, playing with toys, and feeding it treats. Seeing her radiant smile, which she didn't show at school, somehow made me feel happy too. In a blink of an eye, it was evening, and my mom prepared dinner even for Katie. Katie, can you give me your home phone number? I'll call your folks and let them know you're here. With that, my mom called her house. During the call, she seemed deeply engrossed in the conversation. After that day, Katie began having dinner at our house every night. Apparently, her mom often worked late, and her dad, who was at home, didn't do any housework. As a result, their dinner time was always late, so with her parents' permission, our mom started looking after her meals. After school, Katie and I would do our homework and play with the cat until dinner. However, about a year into this routine, Katie had to move. Her parents divorced, and she decided to move with her mom to her maternal grandparents' place in Texas. Before moving, she and her mom came over to say goodbye. I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for Katie. We'll never forget your kindness, her mother said, bowing to my mom. Oh, please, it's okay. Please raise your head. We help each other out during tough times. Don't give it another thought, my mom replied. My mom was a person of strong principles and kindness. I have tremendous respect for her. I can't recall the conversation I had with Katie that day. I haven't seen her since. We exchanged Christmas cards every year, but that also ceased after 5 to 6 years. Then I graduated college and started working at a precision machinery manufacturer. I was assigned to sales, and it's been 3 years now. Taking over clients from seniors and establishing new ones, I now handle numerous major accounts. Good morning, Jason, my colleague Mike from the next desk greeted me. Good morning. Tomorrow, we've got a meeting with BuT Electronics. It's a big deal that's vital for the company. You pumped and prepared? Yes, I'll have it ready for review later. As we talked, a secretary called out to Mike. Mike, there's a call for you from BuT Electronics. Picking up the phone, Mike's face turned pale rapidly. What? How could this? Yes, I see. I'm terribly sorry. Right away. Please, can you give us one more chance? What? Wait, hold on. After hanging up, he just stared blankly, still holding the phone. What happened? I asked. Turning to me, he said, Jason, you gave the wrong time to BuT Electronics for our meeting, didn't you? They thought the meeting was yesterday. They're furious that we stood them up. This deal is toast. It's your fault. What? But wasn't it you who communicated the schedule to them? What, are you trying to pin this on me? I wanted to throw his words right back at him. To begin with, I hadn't communicated the schedule to the client at all. Mike had arranged the schedule and then informed me about it later. And yet, trying to blame it on me, he reported the matter to his boss and supervisor. Johnson went to apologize on his behalf. However, they wouldn't listen, and in the end, the deal with BuT Electronics fell through. When Johnson returned, he said to me, Jason, what have you done? Because of you, the crucial deal we staked our company's future on has been ruined. How are you going to make this right? But sir, it wasn't me who informed them about the schedule. It was Mike. Enough. No excuses. You've caused harm to the company. Maybe you should consider resigning. That's something Johnson always says when he's angry. Wait, I really don't want to quit. Then bring in a contract worth the same amount as the machine we were going to sell to AB Electronics within 3 days, or you're fired. How could I possibly secure such a deal in just 3 days? I was at a loss for words after hearing Johnson's ultimatum. But then I remembered something. There's a client who's currently considering purchasing the same machine we were planning to sell to AB Electronics. They always try to haggle the price down, constantly negotiating for discounts. I'd almost given up, thinking they had no intention of buying, but now I had to somehow close the deal with them. I quickly revised the quotation and set an appointment with that client. Upon arriving at their company, a man named Kevin assisted me. "I've brought a new quotation today," I said, handing him the quote. Kevin scrutinized it. "Can't you go a little lower?" "I really can't go any lower. We've adjusted the price several times already," I pleaded with Kevin, putting on a distressed look. "Please, Kevin, I'm sure our equipment will be very beneficial to your company. We'll even include regular maintenance." Kevin pondered, crossing his arms. "I get what you're saying, but at this price, my superiors might not approve. I personally want to purchase it, but how about I explain the benefits directly to your boss? Maybe over a meal or something." "That might be difficult. My boss is pretty busy." "I'm begging you, Kevin. Please just give me a chance to discuss it over dinner," I pleaded desperately. "The machine sells for tens of thousands of dollars. For our company, the cost of a dinner would be insignificant compared to the sale." "All right, Oz, but my boss is out right now, so I'll get back to you another day." "That's fine. Thank you so much." Kevin saw me out of the conference room. Just then, the elevator opened, and an older man entered the office. "Supervisor, I wanted to see you. Do you have a moment?" Seeing him, Kevin immediately approached. "So this is Kevin's superior." Kevin explained the situation to the supervisor, but to my surprise, the supervisor began to shout angrily. "Trying to win us over with a dinner. We told you countless times, if we can't afford it, we can't buy it. If you can't offer a better price, then just leave and don't come back." Did I do something so wrong to be yelled at like this? While I was still in shock, Kevin whispered to me as he nudged me towards the exit. "I'm sorry, he is just in a bad mood today. He always lashes out like this when he's upset." It seems the supervisor is quite a difficult character, but without his approval, we won't be able to finalize the deal. If I don't land this contract, I'm going to lose my job. What should I do? As I was racking my brain, I heard the sound of heels clicking down the hallway. "Wait, supervisor." I turned around to the sound of a young woman's voice. There stood a beautiful woman in a business suit. "Watson, what's up?" She quickly approached the puzzled-looking supervisor. "I've reviewed the documents too, and I believe that equipment from that company would be valuable for us. Please consider purchasing it." She looked straight into the supervisor's eyes as she spoke. "Well, if you say so, Watson." "Kevin, move forward with the contract process right away." The supervisor then turned to me and said. I was absolutely gobsmacked for a moment. I had no idea what had just happened. "So you're saying you'll make the purchase?" "Yes, Jason can't say no when the boss's daughter asks. Now can we?" "Boss's daughter? This woman?" As I looked at her, she smiled and said, "Jason, long time no see. Don't you remember me?" Even though she said that, I don't recall knowing any Watson. But as I continued to gaze into her face, it felt somewhat familiar. "Wait, who are you again?" She spoke up again. "Do you remember me as Katie?" "Katie? Oh, is she talking about the same Katie I used to walk to and from school with and hang out at my place during grade school? She's changed so much. I didn't recognize her. Wow, it's been like 15 years, hasn't it?" "Yeah, so nostalgic. I saw your name on the business card attached to the documents and thought it might be you." "Really? Boss's daughter?" "Actually, my mom remarried when I was in high school, and I took on the name Watson." "Wow, really? Hey Jason, instead of just standing here chatting, want to go out for a drink tonight?" "Sure, it sounds good." Katie and I exchanged contact info and planned to meet for drinks after work. When I got back to the office and reported the good news, my supervisor was taken aback. "You really got the contract?" "Yes, we haven't signed the papers yet, but we got the green light." "Great job, Jason." Supervisor was thrilled. Looking over at my colleague, Mike, he seemed uneasy at his desk. After wrapping up work for the day and heading to the bar for our meetup, I found Katie already waiting. "Thanks for today. You saved me. I didn't get fired because of you." "What are you talking about?" As I filled her in, she was sympathetic. "It's terrible for a senior to put the blame on a junior like that. Well, thanks to you, the deal went through, so I'm really grateful. Seriously, thanks." Upon hearing my gratitude, Katie shyly smiled. "I'm honored I could help. To be honest, I've always been grateful to you for everything. We lost touch after I moved, but I'm glad we could reconnect like this." According to Katie's story, when she was in high school, her mother divorced and began dating a man who was then the manager of the office where she worked. They eventually got married. However, a few years later, Katie's stepfather's father, the CEO of the New York headquarters, fell ill and he had to take over his position. Their whole family moved to the city. "You could have let me know when you moved back." "Sorry, but weren't you the one who stopped replying to my New Year's cards first, Jason?" "Did I?" "Yes, so I thought maybe you found a girlfriend, and I didn't want to intrude." Turns out I never did get a girlfriend. "Really? No girlfriend?" "Nope, none." "Well, maybe our meeting here is fate. If you're okay with it, would you like to date me?" I was taken aback by her sudden confession and was rendered speechless for a moment. But it wasn't that I disliked the idea. I was actually really happy. Back in elementary school, being around her always made me happy, and whenever she laughed, I felt joy. I remembered that feeling. Of course, I'd love to. I extended my right hand to her, and she gently took it. "Really? I'm so happy." This is how we started dating. 2 years later, I proposed, and we got married. "Mary, dinner's ready." Seeing her play with our cat, she seemed just like the old times. Katie had faced many challenges growing up, but from now on, I wanted to be by her side and make her happy. 3 years ago, my wife Emily left me and our 8-year-old twins. After losing Emily, I was at rock bottom, drowned in grief. I had no motivation to do anything and lacked the confidence to protect my children without Emily around. There was someone who stood by us, me and my children. Without this person, I don't think I could have raised my children, but now that person has to leave my side. I still love Emily, and I should celebrate the happiness of this benefactor, yet I find myself deeply confused by my own feelings. During these times, it was an unexpected group of people who gave me the push I needed. My name is Liam. I'm a 35-year-old worker at a company that sells nursing care supplies. I live with my twin daughters, who are now 11 years old and in the 5th grade. Both are girls named Anna and Leah, who look a lot like Emily. Lately, they seem to be into romance comics and often say precocious things, but they are good kids who actively help out. Emily passed away in a traffic accident 3 years ago. Emily had left for her usual part-time job on the day of the accident. I had left for work earlier, and Emily had told me, "See you later," as she always did, but that was the last time I would hear her voice. By the time I rushed to the hospital, Emily had already passed away. I don't remember much right after Emily's death. Although I was in shock after suddenly losing Emily, I only thought about supporting the children. While I desperately arranged for the funeral and took care of the children, days seemed to pass by. I remember clearly that the children cried a lot. At the time, the children were in the 2nd grade. They were 8 years old. They were not of an age where they didn't understand anything. I think they understood that they were saying goodbye to their mother. I held the crying children as long as time permitted and tried to devote as much time as possible to them. I cooked, albeit far from matching Emily. My cooking wasn't very good, but the children ate it without complaint. I think they knew they could no longer eat their mother's cooking. I wanted to be as close to the children as possible, but I also had a job. Although I had some savings and the insurance had paid out, so we weren't short of money, I couldn't lose my job as a single parent. I gave it my all: work, household chores, and parenting. I didn't want my children to be financially crippled, but I also didn't want them to feel lonely. Such thoughts kept me going, but I think I reached my limit one day. 1 month right after Emily passed away, I fell. Unfortunately, at that time, I had no one whom I could easily ask for help. I grew up in a single-parent household, and my father was elderly, so I couldn't ask him to take care of the children. Emily's parents, my in-laws, were dealing with my mother-in-law's long-term illness, and my father-in-law was supporting her, so they couldn't take care of me or my children. Feeling dizzy and ill, I was still determined to push through because I was the only one my children had. It was at that time that Emily's younger sister, Molly, came to our aid. "I heard from Mom that you're not feeling well, Liam. I bought a bunch of things. I'll make dinner for the twins too," she said. Molly, Emily's sister, is 6 years younger than me and works as a tutor. She used to visit us often, talking with Emily and playing with my children. Emily adored her younger sister, and my children also loved her a lot. But after Emily's death, the only time I saw Molly was at the funeral. Actually, Molly had offered to help, saying, "I'll come and help," but I had turned her down. I was afraid of becoming dependent if I accepted help. I thought I had to do everything by myself because from now on, it would just be me. I feel dizzy from the fever, but I tried to refuse the help. "I'm fine. I can handle it. I think the fever will go down soon. Leave the kids to me," I said in a weak voice. Then Molly said, "No, rest. You need to rest. I'm worried not only about the twins but also about you." Her angry voice reminded me of Emily. Emily often scolded me like this. It felt oddly nostalgic. Then, I was taken to bed against my will. While I was asleep, Molly prepared meals for my kids and took care of chores like laundry. Molly had come in the evening, but when I woke up, it was already past 10 p.m. She had even helped the kids with their bath and prepared for their school the next day. My children were already asleep. "Molly, I'm sorry for everything." I felt helpless. "I have to keep going for Emily's sake." I sat dejectedly on the living room couch, but suddenly, I heard the sound of cooking from the kitchen. Turning towards the kitchen, I saw Molly. Back to me, perhaps reaching for a plate, she was wearing Emily's apron. Watching Molly in the kitchen, tears started rolling down my cheeks. Perhaps it was because I was reminded once again that Emily would never be in the kitchen again. Once the tears started, they didn't stop. Thinking about it, I hadn't cried at the wake or the funeral because the children were present. I couldn't cry. This was the first time I cried since I lost Emily. I let my tears flow for a while, and when I calmed down a bit, Molly asked me to move from the couch to the dining table. When I sat down, Molly placed a steaming bowl of chicken soup in front of me. "Here you go," prompted by Molly's voice. I clasped my hands together and said, "Thank you." This was the first time I was eating a meal cooked just for me since I lost Emily. It's delicious. Ever since I lost Emily, I had lost the taste for anything I ate, but this chicken soup was delicious. As I ate, Molly casually picked up a photo from the living room. It was a photo from when we all went to Disneyland, a picture of the kids happily playing. "You've been pushing yourself too hard, haven't you?" Molly, still holding the photo, looked at me with kind eyes and said, "The kids are a handful with work and chores. You're overdoing it." I couldn't respond to her valid point. "Am I not doing well enough, Molly?" "Disagree with me. The exact opposite. You're trying too hard. The kids told me before bed, 'Dad is always working so hard,' but they said you looked very tired." Hearing that, I covered my face with my hands. I had made the children I should be protecting. "Worry. I'll help you. I live nearby. Let me help protect the kids with you." But Molly, you have work too, right?" "I don't want to take up your valuable time." "For our family, we'll be fine." When I said that, Molly sat down across from me. "When Emily passed away, did that mean she was no longer part of your family?" "Absolutely not. Emily will always be a part of my family, a very important part of mine, and the children's family." Molly nodded with a smile. "I'm glad. That's right. Then my relationship with you all hasn't changed either. Just because Emily's gone doesn't mean we say goodbye. The people who were important to Emily are also important to me." With tears in my eyes, I lowered my head. "Thank you, really thank you." Feeling guilty, I also felt a profound sense of relief. It felt assuring to know that I could depend on someone else, someone who would protect my children along with me. No need for you to do everything on your own. I am here. Molly has been coming to our house every 2 or 3 days, and even after 3 years, Molly has been helping our family without fail. Although she comes over less frequently now, on off days, we often go out together. Just me, the kids, and Molly to the kids. She might feel like a much older sister. I enjoyed the relationship I had with Molly and hoped that this lifestyle would continue. However, I was soon made to realize that was wishful thinking by my aunt's words. There's a good marriage proposal for Molly. Why don't you meet him? The aunt was my father's sister. She would come to visit our house about once every few months with various gifts. Usually, she brings candies the kids liked, but that day she brought a marriage proposal for Molly. It seemed that even Molly was hearing it for the first time and looked surprised. No, no, I can't possibly go for an arranged date. When Molly hesitantly said this, my aunt seemed to get a little annoyed. What are you saying? You're already 29, aren't you? If you keep looking after Lime and the kids, you'll miss your chance to get married. The kids have gotten used to living as a trio, and they probably don't need you to help them out anymore, right? I panicked. I still wanted Molly to help out at our place. It wasn't even about the housework. I just didn't want to lose the time spent with my kids and Molly. But as I was about to say that, a picture of Emily, my deceased wife, caught my eye. It made me realize something, that I felt happy spending time with another woman in the absence of Emily. Once I realized that, I felt guilty towards Emily. I could also understand what my aunt was saying. Molly was still 29. If a good opportunity comes along, she should date and perhaps start a family. If she keeps coming to our place, I'd be restricting Molly's possibilities. So I forced a smile and said, Molly, don't worry about us. Why don't you go for the arranged date? You might meet someone nice. But Molly was still hesitant. My aunt pushed forward the conversation almost forcefully. It's settled. I'll get in touch with you about the schedule. Molly was not eager, but after being persuaded strongly by me and my aunt, she seemed to have decided to give the arranged date a try. All right, I'll give it a shot. Hearing Molly's reply, my heart itched a bit, but I pretended not to notice. My aunt has always been proactive. Molly's arranged date was set for 2 weeks later. On the day of the arranged date, I was feeling anxious in the living room of my house despite having to center myself. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of man Molly was meeting and what they were talking about. I couldn't sit still thinking about it. The ones looking at me with cold eyes were my kids who were reading romance comics sprawled out on the sofa. Dad, stop pacing around, get a hold of yourself. I was taken aback by my daughter's reprimand. Not because I was scared, but because she was just like Emily. Mom always used to say, didn't she? Falling in love is a wonderful thing. You shouldn't lie to your own feelings. Dad, aren't you lying to yourself? I was flustered by the words of my daughters Anna and Leah. What are you talking about? I'm not doing anything like that. I noticed my voice sounded pitiful and small. The girls put down the romance comic books they were holding and faced me. We're in 5th grade, you know. We're not little kids anymore. We understand. You like Molly, don't you? What? What are you girls? I was incredibly embarrassed talking about love with my daughters, but they seemed exasperated by my reaction. Stop treating us like kids. Some of us even have boyfriends, you know. We can talk about this stuff. Don't be so shy. I was speechless, surprised by how precious these modern elementary school kids were. Are you worried about us? Our mom is. Well, just our mom. But we love Molly. She's been there for us when we were sad or happy. Molly can't be our mom, but we think we could make a great family with her. Listening to their conversation, I was oddly moved. I thought they were just sloppy kids who liked romance comics, but to think they had grown up enough to say such mature things. I stroked their heads, but they recoiled from my touch as if trying to escape. We told you, stop treating us like kids. I looked at my own hand hanging awkwardly in midair and gave a rueful smile. But Dad, you should go. Your crush might get taken by someone else. Anna chimed in. That's right, we can stay home alone for a while, Pay. You don't need to rush home. Take your time on your date, Leah added. I glanced briefly at Emily's portrait, remembering her smiling face. She was always the type of person who would scold me when I was being pitiful and push me forward. The kids seem to have taken after their strong-willed mother. They say kids grow up fast, and I guess that was exactly the case. And so, pushed forward by my kids, I rushed off to the matchmaking event. During the entire conversation with my kids, one woman kept coming to mind. It was Molly. She'd made me porridge, rushed to the kids' school events, made lunches for sports day, even sewed costumes for the school performances. Molly, I wanted her to continue to be there. There was no one else at the matchmaking venue but Molly. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. Liam, Molly, where's your date? Molly gave a self-deprecating laugh. I told him I had someone I liked and ended it early. Wait, let me say it. I cut Molly off. I'd been dependent on her all this time, playing ignorant while knowing our feelings for each other. Scared to face her. If I kept being so pitiful, I'd get scolded by my kids again, and by Emily too. I had to be the one to talk to. Molly, I love you. Molly looked at me, her eyes on the brink of tears. Is that as a sister-in-law? I met Molly's gaze, seeing the tears in her eyes. I understood. I'd made her wait because of my cowardice. As a woman, I'm sorry for making you wait. It was pitiful. The kids scolded me. They said they think we could make a great family. I think I feel the same. Please stay with us. Dear family. I'd fallen in love with you too, but there was a part of me that felt guilty. As if I was stealing the happiness that should have been my sister's. As if I was taking something that should have been hers. At that moment, I remembered Emily. During her lifetime, it was when our family and Molly went camping together. Watching Molly playing with the kids, Emily had said something. I've come to know the joy of being a part of a family. I hope someday a man will appear who will protect my little sister. And if my sister and the man she loves become part of our family, I think I would be happier than anything else. Now, I believe Emily must be watching over us with a smile. I chose the person because she was the one who wanted me, my children, and my precious sister to be happy first. When I told Molly about this, she laughed through her tears and nodded in agreement. Molly knows Emily's kindness just as well. Shall we head home? I held Molly's hand as we headed home to where the children were. A few months later, Molly and I got married. Our dating period was short. We had been like family to me, so we didn't need a lengthy dating period. When we told the children we were marrying, they said, if you make Molly cry, we won't forgive you. Molly has always been like a sister to us, but now she's family. Even if you two fight, we'll always side with Molly. Hearing these words seemed to put Molly at ease. It seemed she had been anxious about whether they would accept her marrying me. I felt the same joy. I wanted to make Molly happy, and I was grateful to realize that my children felt the same way. Time passed, and then came our first wedding anniversary. Molly gave me and the children presents. Thank you. Can we open them? Of course, open them all together. Molly told us to do so with sparkling eyes. So my children and I opened the presents all at once. Mine looked like a letter, a travel voucher perhaps. But when I opened it, there was an ultrasound photo inside. Is this? I was in complete shock. Then it seems Anna and Leah had opened their presents as well, and they let out a loud exclamation. These are baby clothes. Wait, a baby? In Anna and Leah's hands were a baby's outfit and a bib. Both the children and I were surprised and turned to look at Molly. Molly smiled softly, touched her belly, and said, our family will soon be growing. The children, who had been annoyingly clamoring for a younger sibling, were overjoyed. Without even knowing the baby's gender, they were already thinking about names. Watching the two of them, I gently touched Molly's belly. Molly, thank you so much. Molly then leaned into me and shared a fact. The due date is August 10th. At that moment, I thought of Emily. August 10th was our wedding anniversary with Emily. I think our sister is watching over this child. I nodded repeatedly to Molly's words. I still miss Emily, but I want to keep building happiness with my family. I believe this will make Emily smile too, who is up in the sky. What did you think? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to create more content. See you in the next video. My name is Steve Hart, a 41-year-old single man. I'm a local newspaper reporter in my hometown. I harbor a secret that I can't share with anyone. Truth be told, Even at this age, I have no experience with women. There are various reasons for this, but in short, I guess I don't have the guts. I've had my chances. I mean, it might sound odd, but I do get approached by women from time to time. The issue of not being able to cross that final line was always a matter of the heart. After repeatedly hurting people and letting them down, I eventually got tired of dealing with people. If we're destined to break up, I figured it's better not to date from the start. That way, neither of us gets hurt, and I won't disappoint anyone by failing to meet expectations. Once I reached this state of mind, I found peace in my heart. Sure, there's a bit of loneliness, but I've come to terms with that as a price to pay for my peace of mind. The change in my life came this spring covering the local news. I was putting together a feature on cherry blossom cookies for the upcoming season. I had the chance to make these cookies at a well-established local bakery, a small shop run by an elderly couple. Their only granddaughter, Jenny, who attracted customers as they had no successor, seemed that Jenny would eventually take over. I heard she had graduated from a culinary school with a focus on pastry arts. Thank you for today. Making these traditional cookies for the first time was a great experience. I said to Jenny while enjoying the cherry blossom cookies that I made myself. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I must say, seeing you in an apron was priceless. I had met her a few times at local Chamber of Commerce parties. She was always surrounded by a lively crowd, and I could never get close to her at these events. It seems that she had properly found me, who usually drinks a small beer in the corner of the banquet hall. I always thought you were quiet and cool, so seeing you in a white apron was quite a surprise. I wish I had taken a picture for memory, she chuckled, remembering the scene. I felt a bit embarrassed. She's the face of this shopping district, a local icon with her cheerful personality and charm. She's quite the celebrity around here. Although she is concerned about being over 30 and wants to give up the face of the shop, she's still popular. Cool vibe. That's the first time I've heard that. As I showed my surprise, she shook her head. Seriously, no way. You must know that there are plenty of girls after you, Steve. Leaning towards me, she said this, and I could feel my face flushing. She smiled at me from a distance where I could clearly see her pretty nose and well-defined eyelashes. So, I'm going to take a shot here. Please, will you be my boyfriend, Steve? What? It was so sudden that I thought my ears had gone crazy. You don't want to. As she looked up at me inquiringly, I didn't know how to respond. She was charming, and she seemed to have quite a liking for me. I didn't dislike her. In fact, I might even say that I like her. But it's not that I don't like you, Jenny. I just can't be with anyone. I don't have the courage to date. I tried to respond to her feelings honestly. I told her that I didn't plan on dating anyone. She seemed to think for a moment, then quickly smiled at me. But I like you, Steve. Don't forget that. I want to continue liking you. If I ever stop liking you, I'll tell you. She said this and put her hands together as if praying. Her fingertips were slightly trembling. Upon hearing my response, she seemed to relax, the tension leaving her shoulders. From that day forward, Jenny and I started seeing each other more often. Most of the time, it was her who initiated it. To avoid giving her false hopes, I refrained from inviting her myself. I should probably refuse her invitations altogether, but I couldn't be cruel enough to turn her down. My indecisiveness might be hurting her. It might sound arrogant, but it's true that my heart takes every time Jenny invites me. Would you like to go to this great seafood restaurant I found? Day to day, Jenny had contacted me. She was always finding delicious places to eat or fun events and inviting me. As a local reporter, I really appreciated her suggestions. We arranged to meet at the restaurant over the weekend. The thought of seeing her bright smile made the weekend seem a bit more exciting. On the day of our meeting, Jenny, who is usually punctual, was unusually late. She is usually there before me, waiting with both hands to greet me. I was feeling anxious because she wasn't at our meeting place. She didn't show up even after 5 minutes. thinking she might have had an accident. I was about to take out my cell phone to contact her when I heard, "Sorry to keep you waiting," and felt a tap on my shoulder. When I turned around, there was Jenny, looking a bit tired. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting. I was the one who invited you. I'm really sorry." Jenny deeply bowed her head as she said this. "No worries at all. More importantly, are you okay? Anything happened?" As I spoke, she lifted her head. The moment she did, I was taken aback. She was shedding tears. Passers-by glanced at us. There I was, looking like a jerk making a woman cry on the street. I felt hopeless, not knowing why she was crying. I suggested we sit somewhere and guided her to a bench. During the walk, she kept repeating, "I'm sorry," while her tears continued to flow. I was worried about what could have happened to her, my heart racing. After seating her on a park bench, I went to a vending machine and bought her a warm tea. She accepted the can of tea with both hands and said in a soft voice, "Thank you." Perhaps the warm tea had comforted her a bit. Finally, I was able to stop her tears. I waited patiently for her to share what had happened. "I'm sorry I lost my composure. I've been nothing but trouble today. I'm really sorry." I tried to comfort her, smiling and saying, "It's okay. Actually, the cat I had for a long time passed away the day before yesterday. It was old, so I know it was its time. But that doesn't make it any less sad. I remember there always used to be a calico cat basking in front of the pastry shop. So that cat had passed away. I had it with me for so long," saying that, she began to tear up again. She had been with the cat until its last moments. I could tell from her voice that it hadn't been a painless death. Still, she had stayed by its side until the end, meeting its gaze. It's hard to have your wishes come true. She kicked a pebble at her feet as if she was a bit annoyed. Life's full of unfulfilled wishes. At my words, she nodded slightly. I've never had a pet. I'd never had a chance to raise a pet since I was a child. I had no interactions with animals. My grandparents, who raised me, didn't like animals. I'd barely have any memories of my parents. I grew up under the care of my grandparents. When I asked them about my parents, they wouldn't tell me anything. I only vaguely remembered my mother's face as she said, "I'll be back soon." She left me behind, and I never saw her again. It wasn't until I grew up that I realized I had been abandoned. I had been left by my mother. Since I didn't remember my father at all from the start, I didn't miss him. But about Mom, I have been so lonely. But I could never forgive my mother who just said, "I'll be back," and left me behind. That's why I find it difficult to form relationships with anyone. The fear of getting close to someone, knowing we might eventually part ways, is overwhelming. The thought of waiting for someone to leave me, just like my mother did, is unbearable even to imagine. When I became an adult, I could have adopted a pet, but I never did. I would eventually have to see them off. Just imagining it was painful. I confessed to my girlfriend that I can't keep pets because I can't bear to think of losing them. She looks at me surprised. It's the first time I've talked to her about myself. "Thank you. I learned something important about you, Steve." The face that was crying a while ago turned into a gentle smile. She smiled as if to cheer me up. In the end, I decided to go home without having the seafood we were supposed to eat that day. When we reached the exit of the park, she stopped. She put her finger on her lips and said, "Shay." We could faintly hear a kitten mewing. She quietly approached where the kitten's voice was coming from. Her figure disappeared into the thick of the flower bed. When she came out of the thick, she was holding 3 kittens in her arms. "I found them," she muttered, seeming a bit stunned. But still, she lovingly looked down at the kittens. "What will you do? Take them to the police station?" She looked puzzled at my words. "I'm going to take them home. I plan to raise them." "What? But won't you be heartbroken again? Why aren't you scared?" My true feelings slipped out spontaneously. "I mean, Just a while ago, she was crying about parting with a cat, and now she's picking up abandoned kittens. I can't even understand that in a few years, another heartbreaking parting will be waiting. Rather than imagining the future sadness, there's something more important. Jenny said this with a slightly sad smile. Are you afraid of dating me, Steve? Her words hit the bullseye for me, and I am at a loss for words. I felt a cold sweat trickling down my back. I won't leave you, Steve. Can't you trust me just a little bit? In Jenny's hands, the kittens were looking at me. She was looking at me with the same pure eyes. I thought that if I couldn't take a step forward here, I would be alone forever. I may not be perfect, but I'd appreciate your understanding. At my response, Jenny nodded vigorously and laughed, saying, Leave it to me. Half a year after we started dating, it came time to greet her parents. I had met her grandparents, who run a traditional bakery, several times, but this was the first time meeting her parents who live in a different place. Fortunately, her parents warmly welcomed me. I was tense all the time, but it seemed to be okay. My name is Steve Hart. I'm in a relationship with your daughter, with marriage in view, I said as I moved to bow in their direction. When I raised my face, her mother, Emma, covered her mouth with both hands, looking at me with a surprised expression. Har, you said Steve, right? Excuse me, but is your mother named Lisa? Why was my mother's name coming from Emma, whom I had met for the first time today? I was so surprised that I couldn't respond immediately. Her parents were waiting for my answer, holding their breath. Taking a small, deep breath to compose myself, I replied, Yes, my mother's name is Lisa. But I don't remember much about my mother after she left me at my grandparents' house. She never came to pick me up. There was no point in lying. I told the truth. Upon hearing this, Emma began to shed large tears. You resent your mother, don't you? Her voice was shaking with tears. Yes, if I said I didn't, I'd be lying, I admitted. At my answer, Emma began to sob uncontrollably. Her husband quietly hugged her. I was confused by her repeatedly apologizing to me in a low voice, saying, I'm sorry. As if she had sensed something, Jenny stood up and brought a picture from the shelf, handed it over to me quietly. I looked at the photo. In it were her smiling parents and my vaguely remembered mother, standing shoulder to shoulder. Wait, this is my mom. With her emotions settled and tears finally stopped, Emma began to speak slowly. My mother and her parents had met in Colorado. My mother was a photographer who accompanied high-altitude mountain range trips. Even on the day of this photo, she was in the mountains as part of a TV program staff. Her parents loved mountaineering, and they had encountered my mother several times up on the mountains. Not long after this picture was taken, Emma slipped and fell, calling for help. My mother ran down the mountain as fast as she could. Apparently, the radio that the staff had brought along was unusable due to an error. As a result, Emma, who had slipped, was rescued by the rescue team that my mother called for. But my mother, it seems she had a heart attack at the mountain cabin and never returned. My mother was the savior of Emma's life. What a coincidence. But why did my grandparents hide the truth about my mother? I had always thought my mother abandoned me. She didn't abandon you. She just couldn't come back. When I later confirmed it with my grandparents, they said that it was my mother's dying wish not to tell me about her death. My mother, who was a professional photographer accompanying high-altitude climbers, had always said she didn't want me to know if she ever died on the mountain. She didn't want me to hate the mountains. My mother loved the mountains. And if I didn't know she had passed away, I wouldn't have to grieve, she used to say. I think it's a selfish claim, but somehow I felt like I understood my mother's feelings. It's such a strange connection. Must be your mother's mischief, Emma said with a gentle smile. I will definitely make Jenny happy, I declared clearly to her parents. The next moment, Jenny hugged me happily. I'm not alone anymore. Thinking so made me feel more determined. When the wedding preparations were in full swing, I stayed at her apartment for the first time. It's embarrassing, but it was my first night with her. As the weather forecast announced the arrival of the harsh winter, it was very cold. She was excited and said, "I got a new heater." I was nervous, and my hands were sweaty. "Gently, okay," just as she whispered, and I gently reached into the heater. I heard a cat's voice. I tried to pull my hand out quickly, but it was a moment too late. I felt a sharp pain on the back of my hand. Ouch, it got me. When I pulled my hand out and checked, I had 3 scratch marks on the back of my hand. "Oh, I thought you two would get along," she said with a disappointed face. Now, my nemesis are the kittens she picked up that night. Although they're kittens, they've grown quickly. It seems they don't like my presence, and they're on guard against me. Ever since I first set foot in the apartment, attempting to touch the peaceful kitty under the heated blanket, I was immediately rebuffed. Since we'll become a family once we're married, I'd like to establish friendly relations with them. Tonight, however, the little guy hissed at me. They might think I'm trying to steal her from them. I, on the other hand, want to enjoy the soft feel of a cat for the first time, but I refuse and it gets me down. "Hey, don't be so upset. They'll warm up to you soon," she comforts me, but a sense of anxiety lingers. Thinking too far ahead is your bad habit, isn't it, Steve? Indeed, I do often overthink the future, and it leads to a lot of anxiety and hesitation. Whenever that happens, she's always there to give me a gentle push. With a broad smile, she assures me everything will be all right. I can't tell how much I have been saved by those words spurred on, but I faced my mother's death. I dug up an old newspaper article about my mom. Together, we visited the site. Upon reaching the cabin, I found a picture of my mom among the photos hanging on the walls. In the picture, my mom had a big smile on her face. Looking at that smile, tears welled up in my eyes. She gently rubbed my back, soothingly. At that moment, an older member of the rescue team walked into the cabin. His eyes welled up as he looked back and forth between the picture and me. He smiled and said, "We've been waiting for you." He was apparently an old friend of my mom. He said he recognized me right away because I looked so much like my mom. "I knew you would come visit someday. I've come this far in search of my mother's happy moments." Upon hearing this, he nodded emphatically. Then he pointed at a section of the wall and said, "Read this." There, I found messages written by regular visitors to the cabin. Among them, I found my mother's words. "Enjoy life even when you can't see what's ahead, Lisa." Finally, I received a message from my mother. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, and tears of regret for having resented my mother all flowed out together. Unstoppable, she gently took my hand. "Next time, we'll bring our son or daughter along." "Lisa, yes, we'll come and show your grandchild." Telling this to my mother's smiling face in the photo, I felt as though she gave a slight nod. It felt as though one long journey had come to an end. Within me, from now on, my journey won't be a solo one. I'll live life to the fullest, even if the future is uncertain. That's the promise I made to my mom, because I believe that's the kind of life she wanted for me. Certainly. Here's the text punctuated and formatted into short paragraphs without missing any lines. How was that? Subscribing to our channel can motivate us to create more content. See you in our next video. Normally, I wouldn't be working in a place like this every day. All I had were complaints. One day, I opened the door to my apartment to find an unfamiliar woman changing her clothes. I thought I was hallucinating due to stress and dissatisfaction. "Sorry, I can see you," I blurted out. To my words, she calmly replied, "My name is Tommy Reynolds. I work for a sports equipment manufacturer. On my 29th birthday this year, I reached the top of the sales department." I continued. I was featured in an interview in the company newsletter, published monthly as the top salesperson among my colleagues. I was considered the most successful. I take pride in myself and have always approached my job with pride. I think it's the result of hard work, not talent. But in this world, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. I wish I could have warned my past self who thought he would be fine. The person who undermined me was my direct superior. I had been mistreated by this boss for a long time. The meeting times were wrong. He intentionally didn't pass on messages from clients. There were too many incidents to count on both hands. I had managed to pull through so far, but this time it became irreversible. That client had promised me a large contract, I explained. On the day of the contract, my boss schemed to steal my deal. He gave me the wrong time. As a result, I was late on the contract date. My boss, who was asked to explain the details to the client's representative again, couldn't answer anything. The client became suspicious, and we lost the big contract. My boss pinned all the blame on me. He reported to the top that it was because I was late. My boss, who is a relative of the company's president, got his way, and all my claims were rejected. My colleagues all looked at me with sympathetic eyes. The verdict for me was a demotion. I received orders to be dispatched to a factory in the countryside near the ocean, a rural town in California. I continued. I was off the fast track and left the headquarters while my boss saw me off with a sneering smile. The factory I was dispatched to was a sewing factory near the sea. I was given the position of office manager. The factory had a factory manager, and there was no such position as office manager in the first place. It was a made-up position for me, a cynical cure. I guess the rumor about me had reached the factory. Everyone was wondering why the top salesman who graced the company newsletter was assigned to their factory. The factory manager is a gentle, kind person who is loved by everyone and is about to retire soon. He never asked me in depth about this personnel change, and so my new life began. I was told that the company housing was fully occupied, I mentioned. I rented an apartment near the factory. It's run down and almost laughable. Surprisingly, though, it's clean, and that was the only saving grace. I don't have the same passion for my job anymore. Of course, my work is nothing more than checking the time cards of the employees working in the factory at a small office every day. It's the same routine with nothing exciting going on. I never thought I'd see the day, but now I go home on time every day. I enjoy a slow walk back to my apartment while gazing at the sea shimmering in the sunset. This walk back home has become my only joy. One day, I heard some noise from my apartment when I returned. I recalled. Of course, I locked it before leaving, and I had the key. The word burglar flashed through my mind. I slowly turned the doorknob. It wasn't locked. Pulling the doorknob towards me, the door swung wide open. What lay before my eyes was a strange woman changing clothes. A half-naked woman was staring at me with a bewildered expression. I stammered. "Sorry, I can see you," slipped out of my mouth. "How embarrassing," the woman said as she continued changing without hesitation. Regaining my senses, I rushed out of the apartment and slammed the door shut. As the door shut with a loud thud, I could hear the woman's hearty laughter from inside. I double-checked the room number multiple times. This was definitely my apartment. I didn't recognize the woman who was laughing inside. Summer is near, I thought to myself. Will she act as though she's somewhat unusual? I kept you waiting. "Please come in." A carefree voice from inside the apartment called out to me. "No, this is my apartment," I thought, nervously opening the door. She had a healthy tan and big, expressive eyes, unlike anyone I'd seen around here. "Who are you?" I asked, dumbfounded. "This apartment, it's mine," she replied casually. From her expression, it didn't seem like she had the slightest idea that she might be in the wrong place. I showed her the key I had and explained that this was my apartment. Then, she showed me her key with a dolphin keychain attached. She said this was her friend's apartment, and she had a spare key. Indeed, when we tried it, her key opened the door without a problem. "I'll call my friend and check," she said, and called her friend on her smartphone. After about 3 minutes of talking, she hung up the phone and bowed deeply. "I'm so sorry. It seems like she moved out, and the landlord hasn't changed the locks yet. I apologize for the trouble." "Really?" I said, surprised. Then, I replied to her desperate bow with a bow of my own. After all, I had accidentally gotten a full view of a young woman changing. "Well, let's call it even then." She raised her head with a cheery grin. "Her name was Jennifer Watson," I continued. "She'd come to this town, which felt a lot like San Diego, to help out at a friend's dive shop during the busy season. She'd stayed in this room every year, not realizing her friend had moved. "So, Jennifer, are you a diving instructor?" I asked. "Not quite," she replied. Not feeling right to simply shoo her out, I offered her some iced tea I'd made in advance. "Thank you," she said, draining the glass with apparent enjoyment. "I do instruct, but I mostly do free diving. It's a pricey sport, you know," she laughed. As I cluelessly looked puzzled, Jennifer explained further. "Jennifer was a free diving athlete," I added. "More specifically, a constant weight freedive. A sport where you dive deep into the ocean without an oxygen tank. I worked for a sports goods manufacturer, but I didn't know much about such an intense sport." "I bet there aren't many competitors in the sport, I inquired. "There aren't as many in the U.S. It's on the rise, but it originated in Europe." Jennifer educated me about this world I knew nothing of. "Past a certain depth, you lose buoyancy and just sink. Being sucked into the pitch-black ocean floor is a feeling beyond description," she said with a chuckle. "The mere thought of sinking to the ocean floor gave me the chills," I admitted. "Why not start with snorkeling? Since you live in this coastal town, you should make the most of the sea." Before I could respond, I heard a car horn from outside the window. Her friend seemed to have arrived to pick her up. "Oh, looks like my ride's here. See you around. I'll come by to invite you for diving," she said before making a swift exit. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning, staring blankly at the closed front door for a while. It was the first time I'd felt excited since moving to this town. Her sudden appearance had brought fresh air into my stagnant life. A few days later, she popped into the factory where I worked. She'd brought lunch for her friend for lunchtime at the factory. "I couldn't afford to make you a lunchbox yet," she said, tossing an absurdly large sandwich to me. "Watch out for the lung bomb," she joked. As I savored the sandwich given to me by Jennifer, the factory manager brought over some iced tea. "You seem to know Jennifer well," he commented. "Well, there's a bit of history there," I replied, prevaricating. Taking a sip of his iced tea, the factory manager announced he had something to discuss. At first, since he took the position, I was immediately tense, worried about something at the factory. But his talk had nothing to do with the factory at all. He asked if I knew Jennifer was a free diving athlete, who I had peeked at changing. I nodded in agreement. "Great, that speeds things up," he said with a firm nod of his head. He asked if I, an ex-top salesperson, could approach her to offer sponsorship. When it comes to international competitions, the costs add up quickly. Apparently, she had to give up on competitions because she couldn't afford them before. He wanted to support her, but being out of touch with the headquarters, he was unable to help. He thought that if anyone could get headquarters moving, it would be me who used to be a top salesperson. I was unable to respond to this unexpected request. I knew nothing about free diving, nor who Jennifer really was. I told the factory manager my thoughts honestly. "Well then, let's start with diving," he suggested, pointing at the calendar with a grin. It seemed my days off would be spent by the sea for a while. The factory manager was always quick to act, a characteristic I attribute to competent people. On my next day off following our conversation, I was promptly enrolled in a diving school. With theoretical lessons in the morning followed by practical ones in the afternoon, raised in the city, the deep sea was an unknown world to me. Jennifer was there to gently support me as I cautiously approached it. The first time I dived into the sea, it was, to put it mildly, awesome. While there was a lot to learn, and it wasn't all fun and games yet, looking up at the sea surface from beneath, glistening with sunlight, and being enveloped by the gentle seawater was indescribable. The bubbles I exhaled, climbing to the sea surface, seemed like a scene from a fairy tale. I was captivated by the sea. In just one day, you'll get addicted, Jennifer had told me just before diving. It turned out she was spot on. After finishing the practical diving session and the school finished for the day, I accompanied Jennifer for her free diving practice. She hung a guide rope, relaxing and floating on the surface of the water. A countdown began 2 minutes in advance, and she was to begin her dive within 10 seconds of the official top announcement. Overstepping that would result in a penalty. After a series of deep breaths to fill her lungs with air, she disappeared beneath the water. All that was left for us in the venue was to watch the clock and wait for her to resurface. The tension during this time was beyond imagination. There's a clip attached. At the depth one declares, you must remove it and safely resurface. Apparently, some athletes faint from lack of air, she explained. The fear was magnified after doing a dive, falling into the depths of the sea due to gravity without an oxygen cylinder on your back. A few minutes can feel incredibly long. Eventually, she emerged on the sea surface. As for the procedure, she said, "I'm okay." Just like that, she removed her nose clip and smiled. I'm well versed in land sports, but it was the first time I saw free diving up close, I admitted. I thought the way the team came together in tension to support her was impressive. The concept of doing it for someone else came to mind. I might be able to do it. It was the moment when the switch in my head turned on. After a long time, from that day, I went to the sea on my holidays. Of course, I got a license. I'd accompanied her many times in her practice and built up an image in my mind. I also became friends with the people at the diving shop and guest house. They are all cheerful and love the sea. No one speaks ill of Jennifer. It seemed they were purely cheering for her dream. The expectations waiting on me are also huge. To make her dream come true, my hard work is essential. It has been a long time since I was transferred that I visited the headquarters. There is no marine sports department in my company. I decided to take on the challenge of making a presentation to establish a new department. The headquarters were as lively as before. After a long time, I pulled myself together and attended the internal presentation. The trigger for taking the step was a single phrase from her. There's no marine sports department. Then you should create one. If there's no place, create it yourself. Make the most of your unique strengths and do something that no one else can think of. There are faces of colleagues and bosses who have trapped me at the presentation. I can't fail. A long-lost fighting spirit lit up within me. The presentation was a great success. The president is very interested in launching a new department. He was also interested in nurturing young athletes. In a few days, the CEO and several headquarters staff members will come to watch a mock freediving competition. We've reached the tipping point. The presentation was a success. The bosses are coming to watch the mock competition, not just for Jennifer. Can't other athletes participate as well? I contacted her right away. On the other end of the phone, everyone was celebrating the success of my presentation. Understood. I'll gather the people. You decide the day. I really appreciate all of your help, I said. I heard her voice sound a little tearful. I'm the one who should be saying thank you. Without her support, I don't think I could have recovered. At the CEO's request, the arrangement for the mock competition was made quickly. On the day of the event, it was sunny, and the sea surface was reflecting the sunlight brilliantly. We hired a chartered bus, and the bosses arrived. They planned to visit the factory in the morning and watched the free diving mock competition in the afternoon. It seemed to be the first time the CEO visited the factory, and the factory managers were busy with hospitality. Surprisingly, the factory manager and the CEO seemed to be old friends. Listening to their conversation filled with old stories, it seemed the factory manager was the top salesperson among their peers. The factory manager also seemed to have quite a past. At a barbecue on the beach, the athletes and local divers mingled. I arranged direct conversations with the CEO about diving, the competition, and the predicaments the athletes face. In the open atmosphere, the lunch meeting proceeded smoothly. That's when a man made a snide remark in a noticeably loud voice. He was picking on a young girl, even though he wasn't drunk. He openly ridiculed the free diving competition as just diving. When I checked the source of the voice, it was my former boss who had undermined me. I wasn't expecting him to be accompanying me on this tour, so my mood sank a bit. In front of the athletes, my former boss kept provoking me by saying that this mundane sport wouldn't work for promotion. Although there were athletes who got angry, Jennifer stepped in and stopped them. "It's pretty lame to pretend to know something you don't and then make fun of it," she said, looking straight into my ex-boss's face. Unable to find a retort, he glared at her, his face turning bright red. Even when glared at, she remained calm. She had confidence and conviction. As we started spending more time together, I found myself drawn to her, just like I was drawn to the sea. I haven't told her yet, but if this presentation is successful, I intend to confess my feelings to her. The mock competition in the afternoon was a huge success. Since it was done while explaining the rules of the competition one by one, it was easy to understand, even for those watching free diving for the first time. She patiently answered every question thrown by the CEO and other employees. The CEO and the others seemed to have felt the same excitement and tension I felt when I first watched free diving. They were also fascinated by the charm of the staff involved in this competition. The presentation, including the mock competition, was a huge success. On the spot, the CEO made a contract with their team. He promised to provide full backup. He even expressed a desire to obtain a diving license at a diving school next weekend. So, another man fascinated by the sea was born. I'm going back to the head office to establish a marine sports division. The former boss who had a condescending attitude towards them was demoted by the CEO. It seems he caused various troubles while I was not the headquarters. Honestly, I'm relieved that I no longer have the opportunity to work with him because I don't want him to interfere with this project. Several months have passed since I returned to the headquarters. A poster featuring her is prominently displayed in the lobby. Upon hearing that she is not just a model, but an active player, my colleagues seemed unable to hide their surprise. The relationship between me and her seems to have taken a step forward and a step back. Of course, I told her my feelings like a man. She laughed and said, "I'm okay." But now she is diving the seas around the world. There are few tournaments in Japan. The main battlefield is the seas around the world. It's a dangerous competition, so I get nervous on tournament days. I'm anxious about her safety, but she's different. She's enjoying the seas around the world. I started to feel like it's impossible to tie her down with words like marriage. "When will you return to the US next time, Jennifer?" I asked. I can hear the sound of the waves behind Jennifer. "I'll be back in the US next week." Her voice is a bit patchy, maybe because the signal is weak. No matter how far away she is, she contacts me. "My return this time is special," Jennifer says in a somewhat desperate tone. I'm getting nervous at the seriousness of Jennifer's voice. "I don't think it's a breakup, but Jennifer, what happened?" I timidly asked Jennifer, who was sighing on the other end of the phone. "Why are you sighing? What's wrong? Is there anything I can do?" I repeated my words, anxious. I was pretending to be okay, even when we're apart, but actually, I'm not. "Then you have to take responsibility." After a brief silence, I heard a sulky voice. "Why are you making me wait like this? You better step up and propose properly." With that, the call abruptly ended. I stood there dumbfounded, clutching my smartphone. Snapping back to reality, I left work early and rushed to the jewelry store. I was hustling and bustling about, preparing for the proposal. Then, the day of her arrival came. The PR team was also in attendance to cover her return. I guess the proposal would have to wait, I thought when I spotted her coming out of the arrival gate. I waved slightly, and she ran towards me. She had just left her luggage right there. With such momentum, she threw herself onto me, and I was knocked to the floor. "I'm back. Now propose. Hold on right here." The exchange between us was all heard by the PR team, and the pictures graced the cover of the company newsletter the following month. Let me propose in a more relaxed setting. It's been 5 years since we got married, but I think I'll never forget the words I shouted that day. It still gets a lot of laughs at parties, and she's still laughing about it today. I hope you enjoyed that. Subscribing to our channel gives us motivation to create more content. We'll see you again in the next video. My name is Ethan. I'm 27 years old. I'm just a typical office worker. I use a computer all day at work, but right now I can't see the screen clearly. Every time I try to take a deep breath with my eyes closed, they just won't open. I'm feeling dizzy. I've been struggling to get through my work, relying on caffeine from coffee to push through the day. Finally, it's the end of the workday. As everyone else is calling it a day, I lean both elbows on my desk, rest my forehead on them, and close my eyes, thinking, finally, time to go home. "Hey, are you okay? You've been looking a bit off lately, like you're not feeling well." My boss, Robert, talks to me with a concerned voice from behind. "No, I'm just sleep-deprived, sorry." I'll be more careful. Seeing Robert look worried, I decide to tell him the truth. I thought he would scold me for staying up late, but instead he seemed worried about my lack of sleep. "Is something going on?" "Insomnia is pretty serious," he says, expressing his concern. I really wanted to reassure him, but it's true that I'm struggling. While it's none of Robert's business, I decide to tell him about the cause of my insomnia. A month ago, a new neighbor moved into the room next to mine. My apartment is a rundown corner unit on the first floor, and the room next to mine had been vacant for a while. A student-looking guy moved in during the moving season, and he's been making noise every night, bringing friends over. He seems to be a night owl, making noise, shouting, and occasionally causing the wall to shake. Additionally, it seems someone new moved into the room above mine as well, who runs the washing machine at night and stomps around loudly. I used to hear the sounds of the neighbors' doors opening and closing, but I didn't realize how thin the walls were. Due to these disturbances, I've been waking up several times during the night and suffering from sleep deprivation. I don't want to have issues with my neighbors, but it's been unbearable. So I reported the situation to the landlord. Despite my report, the situation didn't improve. I talked to the landlord again, but he just said that he'd left a note for them and didn't seem like he could do anything more. I guess I have to put up with it as the rent is cheap, but it's really tough. I told Robert after hearing all this. He said, "I see. That's quite a predicament. Lack of sleep can ruin your health. I understand your situation now. But don't hesitate to take a day off if you're not feeling well, okay?" I felt grateful for his kindness and hoped that things would be better. However, even after another 2 weeks, the noise problem continued. I used to live in a shared house near my university when I was a student, so I thought I had a certain level of tolerance for noise. But this noise is too much for me. At the shared house, we had strict rules, and if someone broke them, they would be warned and eventually kicked out by the owner if they didn't change their behavior. As it's a convenient location for commuting and the rent is low rent, I chose this rundown apartment. But now I think the shared house was a much better choice. I don't want to underperform at work, So another day passed with me fighting sleep deprivation with the help of caffeine. As Robert was passing by, he talked to me. "You still look pale. Don't push yourself too hard. I want to talk to you later, okay?" and patted my shoulder. At the end of the day, Robert came to me and asked, "Can we talk in the meeting room?" I thought I was going to be reprimanded for looking so rundown, but the words that came out of Robert's mouth took me by surprise. "Ethan, you must be having a hard time. Why don't you come stay at my place?" From the look on his face, it seemed like he wasn't joking. Apparently, he had been worried about me and had discussed it with his wife. It turned out that his wife also was concerned for my health, suggesting that I should stay at their place to prevent me from collapsing. "You're still living in that apartment you rented when you got your first paycheck, aren't you? You should be able to afford a better place by now. Have you considered moving? But you probably can't hold up until you find a new apartment, right? For the time being, you should rest up at our house, okay?" I didn't expect such concern and tried to politely decline, feeling a bit guilty. But Mr. Robert insisted humorously, promising delicious home-cooked meals if I decided to stay. I didn't give an answer at that time, deciding to think about it more. When I got home, my rundown apartment was not too bad as long as there was no noise. However, the incessant noisy disturbances made me decide to move out. I felt the urgent need for a peaceful place to rest. I was on the brink of collapsing, but my family lives out of state, and I had no friends in the vicinity to rely on. Although I felt guilty for inconveniencing Mr. and Mrs. Robert, I decided to accept their generous offer and stay with them until I found a new place. I had a moment of hesitation about living in the same house as my boss, but then again, it was not that much different from living in a shared house. I felt like I was imposing, but I decided to take them up on their offer. The next day, I gave Mr. Robert my answer and immediately started looking for a new place. It was decided that I would start staying at Robert's house from the following Sunday, and then the day has come when I arrive at Mr. Robert's house. Mrs. Robert welcomed me with a warm smile. I expressed my gratitude for their hospitality, to which she responded, "Don't be so nervous," as they helped me with my luggage and showed me to the room. "There's some time before dinner. Why not relax a little?" she suggested, and the three of us had a light conversation. "It's been a while since we saw you, John. You've really matured," Mrs. Robert commented. Actually, it was not my first time visiting their home. Back then, you used to bring your young colleagues over to our house for drinks. We don't see much of that these days, do we? I remember the times when I was a new recruit and Mr. Robert used to invite me over. He was always considerate of his subordinates and communicated with them a lot at his home. When drinking with bosses, there is often the exhaustion of having to listen to their heroic stories or their preaching about work. But Mr. Robert was different. Even when he talked about work, he was never imposing. He always listened carefully, which made him well loved by the younger staff. As we reminisced, Mr. Robert suddenly turned serious, saying, "Oh, I almost forgot. I have to tell you something important." He turned to me, a serious expression on his face. "We have a daughter living with us, John. I'm sure you understand, but don't try anything, all right?" His tone changed drastically as he stared intently at me. Mrs. Robert couldn't help but laugh at his stern demeanor. "I don't think John would do such a thing, but our daughter is quite pretty, you know," Mr. Robert said, his stern face softening slightly into a smirk. His wife chuckled. "You're still overly protective, as always." I remembered their daughter from her student days, and indeed she was a beautiful girl even then. Their daughter Amy had just graduated from college this spring and started working as hotel staff at the front desk. I met Amy at dinner time. We were having dinner without her as she was coming home late. When we heard her voice from the entrance, "I'm home," I greeted her at the dining table, apologizing for starting dinner without her. But when I looked up and got a proper look at her, I was momentarily stunned. Amy had grown up into a striking beauty. "No problem at all. Take your time," she said. Amy smiled and said something that had everyone at the table nodding in agreement. She's so beautiful. It's no wonder the boss is so protective of her. We all joked. Amy then went to her room to drop off her bags, then took the seat next to me. At that point, the boss paused. "Hey, hold on a sec," he said, appearing flustered. The boss turned to Amy, who was about to start eating, and said, "You can't sit next to him, Amy. Come sit over here. She's a girl who's not yet married after all. We can't let her sit next to a guy so casually," he joked. Yet, there was a serious look in his eyes. We all ended up laughing at our overly protective boss. Before going to bed, I took a bath. "Ethan, can you drink herbal tea?" When I got out of the bath, the boss's wife asked me. So, when I replied that I was able to, she said, "That's great. Herbal tea helped you sleep," and made some for me. We were all sitting comfortably in the living room, drinking herbal tea, when suddenly the boss said, "Ethan, you're good at English, right?" When I nodded, he turned to Amy and said, "Amy, we've got a teacher right here." I saw Amy's eyes light up. When I asked why, she explained that she uses English a lot in her work at the hotel's front desk. The hotel is Japanese-oriented, so a lot of foreign tourists visit there. She had to pass an English test to get hired, but apparently, actual practice is quite difficult, and she's a bit insecure about phrasing and such. I actually spent 3 years abroad in high school. I followed my father on his overseas assignment and lived there. Even now, I can still speak English because I occasionally have to deal with people from English-speaking countries at work. Today, I just want you to rest. I don't want to push you. But if you're feeling better, could you take a look at my daughter's English? The boss asked me this, and Amy also requested it. Of course, I agreed. Thanks to the boss and his family's kindness, I was able to sleep well that night, and I recovered a few days later. Going to work with the boss every morning was a strange feeling, but I got to hear all sorts of work stories from him, and it made me feel like a new employee again. I also felt happy that we could now talk as equals. His wife, who is a housewife, was really good to me. The food was delicious, and she even did my laundry. I was so grateful I didn't know what to say. The boss and I, who both have weekends off, started having a drink together on Saturday nights. He used to drink every night, but now he's being health conscious and only allows himself to drink on Saturday nights. We enjoyed the evening with food prepared by the boss. I was surprised that he could cook, and we had a great time talking over drinks. As I listened to the boss talk and nodded, I suddenly became emotional. He talks about stories about his daughter with a kind tone, his wish for happiness for his family, and his advice to me to walk a similar path in life. Watching him, I couldn't help but think of my own father. My father passed away before I became an adult, just after we returned from the 3-year overseas assignment. I remembered the time shortly before he died when he told me, "Ethan, when you become an adult, I want to share a drink with you." Maybe it was also because the boss's gentle way of speaking was so much like my father's. If my father were alive now, would he be like this? Thinking that, tears streamed down my face. "Hey, what's wrong?" Turning to my side, I found myself crying, no doubt surprising my boss. "No, I'm good. Just drunk a little too much." I shrugged it off with a sheepish response, but couldn't help the tears from spilling out even as I tried to hold them back. "No, I apologize. I was just thinking of my dad," I admitted candidly. Then I talked about the promise I couldn't keep with my father. "Is that so?" There were tears in my boss's eyes as he said, "Your father would be proud if he saw you now, Ethan. You've grown into a hard-working, good guy." He said that, patting my shoulder reassuringly. The words just made me cry even more. His tone was just like my father's. It felt like my dad was talking to me. That night became a special one for me. As we promised, I used the spare time in the evening to tutor Amy. Her days off changed due to her shift schedule and her being a new employee. but when she comes home early, we are able to find common time. She asks me about the conversations she struggles with, what she couldn't understand on that day. I answer her questions, and she actively asks me for more. I advise her on how native speakers would say it, the polite way of phrasing things. Amy diligently takes notes, practices pronunciation with me. In response to enthusiasm, I do role-playing exercises with her repeatedly to make her more practical in conversation and actions. Initially, I was nervous around Amy, but recently we've been able to chat casually. We've started trying to make these small talks in English, making it a bit of a game, and we've become somewhat friendly. Before I knew it, it's almost a month since I moved into my boss's place. Although I've been constantly looking for a new place, the good ones seem to fill up before I can even go see them. Maybe it's the season. I've been looking around without sticking to a single real estate agency, but whether it's bad luck or my searching method, I start to feel anxious. I can't keep relying on my boss indefinitely. I thought at that time, speaking of which, Ethan, no, it's okay. Yeah, my boss nervously started to speak. Ethan, you haven't moved out of your old apartment yet, have you? I was surprised, feeling as if he read my mind. I uttered a no, it's fine. You can stay as long as you like. But Ethan, you've gotten comfortable here, haven't you? He said, grinning knowingly. But it was true. Even though it was at odds with my anxious feelings, I'm sorry. Honestly, I'm very comfortable here, I said, and my boss laughed heartily. Although I had a lot of trouble finding a place, I ended up finding one that was far better than what I originally aimed for. Thankfully, it was okay to move in as soon as possible. Once I secured my new place, I notified the landlord of my current apartment about my departure. Because the move was so sudden, I ended up having to pay for 2 places for a month. But I couldn't continue to rely on my boss for another month, accepting it as unavoidable. I quickly started to prepare for the move. Moreover, my boss said he would help move things if I didn't have too much luggage. I ended up relying on him until the day of the move. On the day I left my boss's house, I made sure to thank his wife sincerely. I had stayed at their place for about a month, being cared for in every way. In gratitude, I prepared something to serve as a sort of rent payment, but both the boss and his wife refused, saying it wasn't necessary. You tutored our daughter, so we're even, they said. After some time passed living in my new apartment, while I enjoyed the comfortable life, I also felt nostalgic for the time spent at my boss's place. I had been thinking of visiting them again. Excuse me, boss. I'd really like to express my gratitude properly. May I come over next Saturday? I asked nervously. He replied, no need for thanks, but we can drink together again. My daughter is off next Saturday, so it's perfect timing. Although he seemed happy, I was a bit nervous. On Saturday evening, as I rang the doorbell at the boss's house, he greeted me cheerfully. Tonight, my wife and Amy prepared a feast because they knew you were coming. Come on in. Both his wife and Amy greeted me with smiles. First things first, Ethan, let's have a beer and toast. As my boss went to pour the beer, I stopped him. Wait, boss. I have something to say before that. In my words, his wife and Amy moved closer. Seeing this, the boss looked surprised, but his wife settled him down, saying, just let him speak. Then I stepped back and spoke out. Boss, I have been dating your daughter, and I wanted to formally let you know. With that, I bowed deeply. When I lifted my face, the boss seemed frozen, deep in thought. After a while, he finally asked, what do you mean by that? Then Amy came next to me and said to her father, I fell in love with him. His wife added, Ethan is a wonderful person, isn't he? She and Amy giggled. Seeing this, the boss was flustered. You knew about this. His wife and Amy exchanged glances and started laughing. I didn't know anything about this, Ethan. What is this all about? The boss tried to regain some fatherly dignity, But his wife chuckled. Aren't you actually pleased? Exposed by his wife, the boss was flustered and said, Don't say things like that. She continued, You said it would be nice to have a son like Ethan. Drinking alone after he left. That was when my wife blurted it out, and I was taken aback, saying, Don't mention that. I can't help it. If it's Ethan? No, seriously, you guys. I grumbled, our team leader with a mix of joy and disbelief. I handed him the gift I bought. There was his favorite brand of liquor inside. Seeing this, he chuckled, Nice choice. All right, you're forgiven. Let's have a celebratory drink to your relationship with my daughter, Amy. He had given us his blessing. We shared drinks and stories. Oh, I might be a bit tipsy, he admitted, a perpetual smile on his face. From the way he was talking, it seemed he was quite drunk. Listen, Ethan, if you don't make my daughter happy, you won't get off easily. But I'm glad the first guy she brought home is you, Ethan. I'm glad it wasn't some weirdo. Please take good care of my daughter. It felt as if I was announcing our marriage, even though I had only intended to announce our relationship. But it did become reality. 3 years since then, the team lead is now my father-in-law. Rather, he has become more a father to me. I used to say, I wish I had a son like Ethan. And now it's really happened. Ethan, let's keep this going. It's our usual Saturday now. We enjoy drinks together with Amy and my mother-in-law. How was that? Subscribing to the channel gives us encouragement to produce more. See you in the next video.